I have to remember to breathe. Like in my grief at 6 months too, because Alexa died in June and then Christmas was 6 months. We actually checked out for 3 weeks. I did not want to do Christmas. We went to a different state. We were gone for 3 weeks. Like I wanted nothing to do with anybody. And I remember like thinking I have to think to breathe. Like it wasn't an autonomic thing. And eventually all of a sudden my brain triggered, oh, you don't have to think to breathe anymore. You know, it's that healing process that happens. I hated it. Everyone said it just takes time. I'm like, don't tell me it takes time. I want it now. But in truth, it just takes time.
It's right around 6 months. I think it was 6 months. I think maybe like 10 days before we hit the 6-month mark after my son died. And I finally went to pick up his autopsy report. And when I went to go pick it up, it was a very strange situation. And I could tell going into the situation that it was strange and they were doing things in a way that they don't normally do. Because normally they mail it out, certified mail. And I like called them to see, what's going on with my autopsy? I haven't gotten it from you guys yet. And they once they heard my name on the phone, they're like, you're the mother of the baby, aren't you? And I said, yes. And they're like, we're going to get it printed for you. Come downtown right now and come and pick this up. And the medical examiner who did my son's autopsy walked it out to me herself because she was like, I can't, being a medical doctor, I can't send somebody with paperwork that says what this paperwork says without giving them support, without giving them compassion, and without telling them what it says. And not to get into all the details of what it said, because that is relevant to my lawsuit. The major takeaway that I got from that conversation was not that I was a bad person, but I was a victim. And she made sure I knew I was a victim. And she made sure I knew that she does autopsies on dead babies all the time. It's an unfortunate part of her career because every stillbirth, if the parents want to have an autopsy, it doesn't matter if your baby died from cord problems or placental problems at 24 weeks and nobody could have done anything, or you suffered an atrocious, should be considered a crime, but for some reason isn't considered a crime situation like what we all endured. She wanted me to know that that wasn't normal. It shouldn't have happened. They knew it shouldn't have happened. They caused it to happen. And I should feel empowered to do what I can legally about it. And the day that I was able to accept being a victim, which is extremely hard for me because I come from a strong family of strong women, and like my mom was a single mom, her mom was a single mom. Before I lost my son, before my relationship with my current partner started, I was a single mom. So I had so much of who I am was built in the strength of who I am, and never being a victim to the world and never being a victim to reality. And I didn't know how to accept that I chose a home birth to have total power over my birthing experience, but have it monitored by medical professionals who will tell me when enough is enough, to accepting that at no point in my labor did I hold any power. At no point was I the responsible party for what was happening to me. And they gaslighted me into thinking I was. They convinced me out of my own fears. They convinced me out of my instincts. Like I knew something was wrong in the moment. Danielle knew something was wrong. Danielle, when she was driving to the hospital, was telling her midwife, it's too late. We're too late. There's nothing that can be done. Like we as the mothers, by the time we get transferred to the hospital or the baby is born, they have pulled us so far from reality that we don't know how to accept who we are anymore. And allowing yourself to accept that you're a victim, allowing yourself to accept not even just that you're a victim, but that you unknowingly relinquished total power over your own self to somebody. And you thought you weren't doing it, and they convinced you you weren't doing it, but that's what you were doing. And you wouldn't have done it in any other situation. You would never let somebody come to your living and walking child and do the things to your child that's living and swinging on the swing set or sitting in math class. You would never let somebody do to them what our midwives wind up doing to our babies. And shortly after I got the autopsy report is when Danielle and I started talking. That movie Pieces of a Woman was coming out, and that was my first time ever appearing on this video, was to talk about Pieces of a Woman. Because, you know, my midwife had to write a huge blog post about it, basically under the scenes calling me out for being an inhuman person, for pursuing legal ramifications. That the movie is all about the humanity of the mother's forgiveness to the midwife, while she knows lawsuits are in the process of being filed against her. But I watched 2 documentaries, and they have nothing to do with childbirth. They have nothing to do with pregnancy, labor, and delivery. It was one of the documentaries about NXIVM, which is a cult, and then the documentary about the physical therapist from the United States gymnastics team who was molesting children for a long time. When you feel like you're ready to look at yourself as a victim and accept the reality of being a victim, I suggest immersing yourself in information of how victims of other types of crime handle it. Because when you're a parent and your decisions about your children come from a place where you truly think you're doing the best for them, bringing them the best that life can give them, it is so hard to accept that you made the wrong choices. But you would never look at a girl who got date raped and say, well, why did you go out with him? You would never look at a child who's being abused and be like, well, why do you talk to your mom like that? We're all victims. And we would never be as hard on any other victims as we are on ourselves. And understanding the mentality, the emotional shift, the disintegrated self-worth that comes from being a victim of any kind was so instrumental in helping me rebuild who I am post the death of my son. I'll never be post grief. And I'm probably right now in a worse emotional state than I've been almost since it all happened. But that's because I just filed my lawsuit. And I've been working with my therapist for a couple months, knowing it was coming down the line, and I got myself prepared for it. But there are going to be times where it's like you wake up a year after the fact, 2 years after the fact, where you wake up and you're like, I still need to remind myself what breathing is. But especially talking about because we started talking about this, of how do you find a balance between that crunchy, health-minded person that you were before and a realistic mother who's experienced the atrocities that this world has in store for us. The only person you have to live with is yourself. You don't owe anybody else justification. You don't owe anybody else excuses or reasons. And it's hard to accept that you can have a balance and you can vaccinate your kids, but also feed them homegrown and organic vegetables. You can snuggle with your babies while they're sleeping, but put them in their crib before you fall asleep. Like, the only person that you need to be a good person for and a good person to, and the only person you have to live with, is yourself. And big no word that I can't say, that word to all of them, because you're the only one who knew what it felt like when your baby kicked. You're the only one who knew what it felt like to hold them in your body. You're the only person who knew what it felt like to have their soul growing inside of you. And there is nobody on this world who will ever know your baby the way that you knew your baby. So there's nobody in this world who deserves an explanation about how and why you are grieving and what changes you're making to yourself to get yourself to the next day. And in a couple months, you won't be making it to the next day. You'll be making it to the next week. And in a couple months after that, you're making it to the next month. And then you'll have setbacks and you'll have days where you have to remind yourself to breathe, but you have navigated your way out of it before, and you can navigate your way out of it again. And you can find ways to honor your child, to give them their legacy, to make the world a better place, despite the fact that they're no longer in it. And you can get, tragically, you can get very comfortable living in grief. Grief isn't only negative. It can be tremendously beautiful too.
I wouldn't be who I am without her passing away. Like, I wouldn't be the woman that I've become because of her if she'd lived. So it took me years to get there. You're at the very beginning. And I just wanted to tell you that, like, yes, I have regrets, but I'm also grateful to be where I am now. And that wouldn't have happened without her passing away, and the knowledge that I've gained. And now that I've found my voice, thanks to Danielle's encouragement, it took me a long, long time.
That's a message to every grieving parent that finds their way to this channel. Danielle is one of the most open and willing to listen people that I've ever met, especially for those of us who have lost children. It is hard to constantly keep the door open to dead babies. It's really hard. And for the parents that can't keep that door open, absolutely. Like I just said, you don't have to justify your behaviors in grief to anybody. You have to be good to people, but you don't have to justify anything to anyone. And if you're somebody who recently lost a baby and found my Instagram through the home birth loss hashtag that I use on every post I post, or you're somebody who's on YouTube who's pregnant and you're looking at videos about birth plans and Danielle's video shows up on your thing and it's all of us talking about it. We are not inclusive or exclusive. Sorry. I meant to say, like, we don't only talk within our pocket of people. It is an open door to everyone who's navigating the process of becoming a parent to a first baby, or experiencing the loss of any of your babies, or even if you've had successful home births and your children are fine and your body is fine and they're like 15 years old now and there's no signs of developmental issues or anything like that, and you know it went well, but you're hearing our stories now and you realize what you were a part of, the door is always open. It's the culture that I have found of grieving parents is one of the most willing to listen, willing to talk, and willing to support groups of people to anybody who is unfortunate enough to know about us at all.
And you know what, you guys brought up a couple good points of breathing. We always forget to breathe. Our body will always kind of know to breathe, but real breath of actually oxygen going to your organs and all this stuff, we don't do that once you've lost a baby. It just doesn't happen. Another thing that I learned kind of early on was your story is your story. What happened is a part of you. It's a part of your being. It's a part of your life. It doesn't change. It doesn't go away no matter what anybody says, no matter if somebody believes you or not. Your story is your story. It's your truth. Just like your baby, your child is your child. They will always be a part of you, no matter when you lost them, no matter what. And part of how I found my voice to speak out was I speak out in like honor of my son. And I've noticed a lot of like all of us, we get together because it's like, it's us with what we've had to go through, but we are the surviving part of them. So we continue to speak out. We continue to share our stories, share what happened, and live through it, because that's what it is. Every day when you get up, you're living through it again. You may not think about it. You may not realize it, but that's exactly what you're doing. You're still living with and for your child. So it's something different of like, it is like how Christina said that she's like, she's farther along than the rest of us. I wish my son was here. I'd do anything to take back everything and have him here. I'd trade places, whatever. But I will say my son gives me this type of power or strength that I never had before. It was never there. This was whoever I was before my son completely changed into who I am now. So everything that I do, the battles that I face of putting out information or sharing our stories and people don't want to hear it or all this stuff, I deal with it because I've experienced the worst of losing my son. And I know that, and there's nothing anyone can do or say to me that will ever be as bad as what I've already gone through. And then also there's this thing of like, my husband says, because I have down moments behind the scenes of like editing and putting videos out, and I get like personally attacked on Facebook and all over the place. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like I've asked my husband, why do I do this to myself? Am I like glutton for punishment? Like, is something wrong that I'm putting this out there? I'm making myself vulnerable to put this information out there, and I'm getting attacked. And my husband has to remind me, you have the strength of Gavin. And that is why all these years later, you continuously do this, and you continuously reach out and find other mothers and other families and connect the dots and help people. He was like, because he's like, you hold on to that. And he's like, and you're, as much as like there's that, you do find a level of peace. It's different. Everyone's peace is different as time goes by. It's a level of living before you survive, and then you start to live again, and it changes. Mine is, I can't live without him. So for me, talking about him and helping other people through their stuff, and all the things that we do and how we share, getting the information out there brings me that sense of peace, because I just didn't have that. And that's my biggest regret. Other than everything of all the choices that I made, I just didn't have the information. And if I had the information, I would have done things differently. And that is what I know. I knew it when it happened. I knew it as time was going by. I knew it in my grief and my darkest things. If I had known better, I would have done better. And I know all of us say the same thing. And so it's like, if I can do anything, just like the rest of us, because every single one of us that's here agree with this, if we can do anything for anyone else, is share what we know. So anybody could not end up in the same situation that we have been in, because it's horrible. It's something that nobody should ever have to go through. A parent should never have to bury their child. Both my grandmothers both said that when they had to bury children, they were like, the worst thing you will ever experience as a mother, as a parent, is burying your child before you, because it's not natural. And there's how natural we want it to be. It's not natural, not the natural order of life that a parent is burying their child. The children are supposed to bury their parents.
For the gifts that she gave me because she died, right? I would probably be a home birth midwife if she hadn't died, right? I would have been one of those dangerous persons. But because she passed away and I chose an alternate route, and also I have a 15-year-old daughter, I wouldn't have Abigail had Alexa lived, because she was my last kid for sure. I'm grateful for the gifts that her death has given me, decade plus beyond her death. And that's the healing part of grief, that's got me to there, in my wonderful career. I wouldn't have the career that I have now. And I wouldn't know you ladies, you beautiful ladies, had she lived. So I'm grateful for the gifts that her death gave me, not that I'm grateful that she died. I just wanted
I call that finding purpose. Like for me, I tried to find purpose in this horrible situation, because I want to find beautiful, like you're digging through the dirt, you find a pretty little gem. Like I'm in this absolute crap situation. I want to find every good piece out of it. Like
pockets of joy. That's what I call it. Pockets of joy.
Me and my husband a lot closer. we changed our business name to go after her. And for Sophie. So it's in honor of her. So we're building a business in honor of her. Like there's different things, or if I can just find like the smallest little nugget of purpose, like, so I can definitely relate to that because I try to do that 100% of the time. And
someday
even-
you're going to be sitting on social media. You'll just be scrolling through your phone. And if you talk on your social media accounts, inevitably somebody will reach out to you someday and say, I was planning a home birth and I heard your story. I changed my plan. And if I wasn't in the hospital when I had my baby, we would both be dead. That's going to happen to you. And there is going to be somebody who reaches out to you and tells you, because your baby died, my baby's alive. And that never amounts to anything when it comes to the life that you lost, but it makes the fact that you can't change your reality much more obtainable to be comfortable in. And I hope it doesn't happen sooner for you than later, because I really hope that we see changes, that people stop choosing to birth out of the hospital, but we're not going to see that. And I have to be realistic, and it's just going to increase in popularity until the government steps in and decides that our babies matter. But it might even be someone you know. For me, the first person to say it to me was a girl who was one of my best friends in high school, who I hadn't seen in a very long time. I had only congratulated her on her pregnancy and stuff like that. And she had done a walkthrough with my midwife. And when she was in her early pregnancy, and it was before my son died, and I hadn't really posted that I was choosing to work with them because I knew I would get flack from people about not wanting to birth in a hospital. And I was so certain in my decision that they were safe for me that I didn't tell people what I was planning. And so she didn't know, and she wound up going to my midwives and having a walkthrough. And she did say at first she didn't really feel uncomfortable, but she hadn't really made her mind up about it. And my son died. And she was like, that was the deciding factor. Like I had pretty much decided hospital birth, but I still didn't know for sure. And then I heard what happened to you. And I decided to have my baby in a hospital. And her baby, despite being born in a hospital, in her birth had such a severe loss of oxygen that he was in the NICU for 3 months for HIE and is still disabled from having HIE. And she has said to me, if I had chosen to birth out of a hospital, he would be dead. And there's nothing anybody could have done to save him. He was born in the best hospital that we have, with the best NICU that we have. They have all the cooling. I think there's only 2 hospitals in my region that have the ability to do the cooling treatments to babies and stuff like that. And he was born in that hospital, and he still suffered from birth trauma. And I don't want anybody you love to experience something so atrocious. And I never would wish those things on somebody that I love, just to validate what has happened to me. But someday, somebody else's terrifying story is going to mesh up enough with your terrifying story to tell you that your child, our children, they're impacting things and they're making changes. And every time I have to remind myself to breathe, I remind myself, if I keep breathing, so does John. If I keep moving, so does John.
Can I tell you something interesting? Because I haven't told you guys this. So most of you that's on here today have shared your story already on the channel. I can tell you that I've had at least one person for each one of you that you have saved somebody's life. I'm going to tell you that right now. Christina, you've had somebody that had an increase of baby movement. If they had not watched yours, they were hospital birth, by the way. They would have ignored it and kept doing the dishes. She went to the hospital, baby came out, baby's alive. Okay, there's one example. Another one, Liz, there was a home birther that had birthed a baby. at home. Second time around, something felt off this time. They had watched your story, reluctantly watched your story, did not want to watch your story. By the end of whatever, something felt wrong, went to the hospital, their baby is alive. Baby was in special care for a little while, but baby came out alive. Bambi, same thing. Somebody felt something was wrong with their kid afterwards that could have easily been dismissed, and that they kept saying something's wrong, something's wrong. Sure enough, baby got checked, something was wrong, and baby is here today. I'm telling you, each one of you have no idea. I bump into a lot of people. I've heard a lot of stories, and some people do not want to hear our stories, but they secretly watch them anyways. And because of sharing it, there has been a lot of people that have come back later and been like, I didn't know if I should tell you this or not, but this is what happened because I was aware that something was off, or I was aware to trust my feelings, because we did. All of us had a feeling that we ignored because maybe we didn't understand it, or maybe we were being brainwashed and, and told, dismissed and told everything's fine. You're a first time mom, or whatever the whole thing is. Oh, you don't know I'm the midwife. You don't know. I know what I'm doing. Whatever the thing was, other people have learned, whether out of hospital, birth center, home birth, or hospital, other people have watched from what you guys have shared and know not to dismiss that feeling and to dismiss that. And I really wanted to share that. I'm really glad that Madison brought that up because it's true. It's already happened. These are things that's already happened that I was just like, I just kind of like let people share what they want to share. You know what I mean? But I want you guys to know that you guys have already saved lives already. And I don't know if there's been others. I just know who's reached out.